the story says, "My name was Jack. Last autumn, I felt a desperate need to escape the noise of Chicago and the work pressure that was driving me to the brink of insanity. I decided to rent a small log cabin through a popular app. The cabin was tucked deep within the Wisconsin forests, at least a 40-minute drive from the nearest town. When I arrived, the scenery was both enchanting and desolate. The trees were so dense they blocked out the sun even at noon, and the silence was so heavy you could hear the ringing in your own ears. The cabin was old but well restored, a single-story building with large windows overlooking the dark woods from every side. On the first night, the reflections of the trees on the glass made me uneasy, but I tried to convince myself it was just urban paranoia. By 8 p.m., I was starving. Since I hadn't brought enough food, I decided to try my luck with the delivery app. I couldn't believe there was actually one restaurant in the neighboring town willing to send a driver to this isolated spot. I ordered a simple dinner and sat waiting, watching my phone screen as it frustratingly lost signal every few minutes. About an hour later, I saw car headlights approaching from the distance along the winding dirt road. I felt a sense of relief just at the thought of seeing a human face. Even for a minute, the car stopped in front of the cabin. The driver got out, but he didn't knock. He placed the paper bag on the doorstep, hurried back to his car, and sped off as if he were escaping from something. I opened the door slowly and took the bag. The food was warm, but I noticed a small envelope taped to the bottom with clear tape. I stepped inside, locked the doors behind me, and sat at the kitchen table, opening the envelope with curiosity. Inside was a torn piece of notebook paper with a message scribbled in a shaky, hurried hand. "Do not open the back window tonight. He has been watching you from there since you arrived." A chill ran down my spine. My hand holding the burger froze. Was this some sick joke small-town locals play on tourists? Or had the driver actually seen something as he approached the cabin? I tried calling the restaurant or the driver, but the signal was completely gone now. No service. I was entirely alone. The back window was massive and had no curtains. It faced the backyard, where the dense forest began immediately. I tried to distract myself with the TV, but the wind began to howl, scraping tree branches against the wooden walls with a sound like claws. I couldn't resist the urge to look, but the warning on the paper haunted me. I crawled across the floor so my shadow wouldn't catch the lamplight and approached the edge of the back window. I lifted my head with extreme caution. At first, I saw nothing but pitch black darkness and the reflection of my own pale face. But as my eyes adjusted to the first row of trees, I saw something that made my heart stop. There was a figure standing there, inhumanly thin and unnaturally tall, wearing dark clothes that made him blend into the tree trunks. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, staring directly at my window. Worse yet, he was holding something that glinted under the faint moonlight. It looked like binoculars, or perhaps a camera. I stayed frozen for minutes. As I watched him, he slowly raised his hand and pointed his finger directly at the window where I stood. Then he began walking toward the cabin with terrifyingly long, silent strides. I bolted to the bedroom and locked the door. I stayed there all night, clutching a kitchen knife, listening to the sound of heavy footsteps circling the cabin and the faint rhythmic scratching of someone trying to pry open the windows from the outside. My name is Ethan. I am a professional photographer specializing in wildlife and nature, a job that often requires me to spend weeks in total isolation. In the summer of 2024, I decided to spend an entire month in a remote rural area deep within Oregon, My goal was to document the migration of rare bird species found only in that spot. I rented an old farmhouse online, built entirely of dark wood that smelled of age and dampness. It sat in a desolate location on the edge of a rocky cliff, overlooking a lake perpetually shrouded in thick fog. When I arrived, the air was biting despite the summer. The owner met me, a suspiciously thin elderly man with shifty eyes and restless movements. He handed me the keys with a frantic urgency, as if he couldn't wait to get away from me. He warned me, in a stern and absolute tone, that the upper floor was strictly off limits due to maintenance, insisting I remain only on the ground floor. Inside, the house was a museum of dusty antiques and furniture that looked untouched for decades. A profound silence reigned over the place, a heavy silence broken only by the creaking of the wood beneath my feet, echoing through the long hallways in a way that sent shivers down my spine. In the master bedroom overlooking the lake, I noticed it immediately, an old stuffed bear sitting in a top corner above the massive wardrobe facing my bed. The doll was tattered, its fur missing in patches. Worse, its right eye was completely gone, giving it a bleak and repulsive appearance, as if it were watching the room with a single distorted eye. At first, I tried to ignore it. Old country houses are often filled with such discarded things, but as the nights passed, a heavy, strange feeling took hold of me. The feeling that I wasn't alone. I would wake up suddenly in the middle of the night, feeling cold gazes piercing my body, sharp stares coming specifically from that dark wardrobe. One night, while sitting in the dark adjusting my professional camera settings to shoot the stars through the window, I noticed something my mind had previously missed. A faint, tiny glint of light, a single flash, coming from inside the doll's only remaining eye. I froze in my tracks, my heart pounding violently. I grabbed my flashlight and approached the wardrobe. As I picked up the doll, I immediately felt a small, hard object hidden deep inside its cotton head. I carefully slit the fabric with a small knife, and a tiny, highly sophisticated wireless surveillance camera fell into my palm, a terrifyingly modern device that stood in haunting contrast to the ancient house and the tattered doll. A wave of cold swept through me. My breath hitched as I stared into the tiny black hole of the lens. I immediately connected the camera to my laptop, my hands trembling as I scrolled through the files. I found hundreds of hours of organized digital footage, all clearly aimed at my bed, tracking every move I made. I started playing the recording from last night. I saw myself sleeping deeply and peacefully. Then, at exactly 2 a.m., I saw a scene that froze me in pure terror. The door of the massive wardrobe beneath the doll began to creak open with agonizing slowness. A very thin figure emerged, wearing tattered clothes similar to the owner's, but torn and caked in dirt. This person wasn't stealing. He didn't touch my bag or my money. He didn't even try to physically harm me at that moment, which made it infinitely more terrifying. Instead, he quietly pulled up a chair and sat directly beside my bed. He sat there, staring at my face, while I slept for hours without so much as a blink. Occasionally, he would lean in so close that his breath must have brushed my skin, only to retreat into a deathly silence, studying my features. At the end of the video, I saw him pull out a mobile phone and take a close-up photo of my face. He began whispering unintelligible words, as if talking to himself, before sneaking back into the hollow space behind the wardrobe and locking it from the inside. That's when the horrific reality hit me. The owner never left, or there was someone else literally living inside the walls of this house, using the wardrobes and hidden passages as secret tunnels to move between rooms, while the renters thought they were safe. I didn't wait for a single second. I gathered my heavy equipment with lightning speed trying not to make a sound that might alert him to my presence. I bolted to my car, frantically looking over my shoulder. As I sped down the narrow dirt driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror toward the upstairs window. The one I was told was closed for maintenance. The curtain moved slowly, and a pale face watched me from behind the glass, wearing a wide, chilling and distorted grin. I called the police the moment I reached the nearest town. When a large force raided the house, they discovered a terrifying network of secret passages carved inside the walls, professionally connecting every room. In the upper floor, they found a literal command center filled with monitors, broadcasting live feeds, not just from that house, but from dozens of other rural rentals scattered across the region. The owner had vanished completely, as if he never existed. No trace of him was found in any official records. However, in his secret room, they found a massive photo album containing pictures of thousands of former tenants, all captured while they were sleeping. On the last open page was the photo of me taken just hours earlier, with a handwritten note beside it in shaky script. This is the next one. To this day, months after the incident, whenever I rent a new place or stay in a hotel, I frantically inspect every corner, every screw, and every piece of furniture. I can never sleep unless I ensure every wardrobe and door is wide open before my eyes, so no one can hide behind them. The thought that someone shared my room, in the darkness, breathing beside me, watching my dreams and waiting for my moment of total vulnerability with a smile, is a nightmare that never leaves my mind. Real horror doesn't always dwell in dark forests or supernatural entities. It lives in the houses we trust and consider our sanctuaries. It hides in the tiny hidden eyes that watch us from where we least expect, waiting for that moment we close our eyes in peace, only for them to emerge from their dark burrows and unravel our lives. My name is Liam. Last winter, I decided to experience total isolation in a secluded log cabin deep within the Colorado mountains. I needed that solitude to finish my new book, and I didn't pay much attention to the warnings that the area becomes extremely dangerous during snowstorms. The cabin was located in a spot inaccessible to ordinary cars, surrounded by a majestic silence broken only by the distant howling of wolves. On the fourth night, a violent blizzard struck the area. The power went out completely, forcing me to rely on candlelight and the old stone fireplace. As I sat trying to write, I suddenly heard loud, rapid knocks on the heavy wooden door. I froze. There wasn't supposed to be anyone for miles, especially in weather like this. I grabbed my flashlight, approached the door cautiously, and asked in a strained voice, "Who's there?" A man's voice responded, sounding breathless and frantic. He spoke with an official tone. "This is Ranger Miller from the National Forest Service. Open the door quickly. There's an emergency." I looked through the small peephole and saw a man wearing the official green jacket of the Forest Rangers, along with their iconic hat, which partially obscured his face due to the accumulated snow. Shivering, he said, "Liam, right? We have a report of a fugitive killer in this area, and we've tracked his movements near your cabin. I need to come in immediately to secure the premises and protect you." For a moment, I felt a wave of relief that someone had come to help. I reached out to undo the iron latches, but the instant my finger touched the lock, I noticed something strange in the beam of my flashlight as it hit the lower half of his body through the opening. The ranger was indeed wearing the official Forest Service trousers, but on his feet were white sneakers, old and stained with dark red spots that couldn't possibly be mud. Colorado Rangers never head out into blizzards without their heavy, official snow boots. I stopped dead and slowly withdrew my hand, trying to keep my voice steady. I said, "Officer, could you please show me your official badge or ID through the window?" A sudden silence fell outside, a silence more terrifying than the storm itself. Then, his voice changed completely. He was no longer the concerned official. His tone turned chillingly cold and calm. He said, "Why make things difficult, Liam? It's freezing out here, and I know you're alone. There's no signal to call for help." Panic, like I've never known, seized me. I backed away from the door and frantically checked every window. Suddenly, I heard a metallic scratching coming from the back kitchen window. He was trying to pick the lock. I ran to the kitchen, grabbing a small axe I used for firewood. I saw his hand sliding through a gap in the window he had managed to pry open. I slammed the axe into the window frame with all my might. The hand vanished instantly, followed by a muffled cry of rage. Footsteps began circling the cabin rapidly, and he started pounding on the wooden walls, screaming my name hysterically as if he had known me for years. I spent the entire night in the center of the living room, staying clear of any windows, gripping my axe without even blinking, watching the shadows move outside. He tried to trick me, sometimes by crying, other times with threats. At one point, he even began mimicking a woman's voice screaming for help, trying to lure me into opening the door. But I knew that if I opened it, I wouldn't make it out alive. As the faint morning light began to seep through the snow, the sounds vanished. I waited 2 more hours before daring to look out. No one was there, but I found the official ranger's jacket discarded in the snow, torn and stained with old blood. He had killed a real ranger just to get those clothes. I got into my snow-covered car and, with great difficulty, managed to drive toward the nearest fire station. When I arrived and told them what happened, the police combed the area. They found the body of the real Ranger Miller buried under the snow just 1 kilometer from my cabin. But the most terrifying discovery came when they checked the cabin's rental records. The man knocking on my door was the previous tenant who had disappeared 2 weeks earlier. They never found him. But inside my luggage, I found a small note that hadn't been there before. It read, "You were smart about the shoes. I'll choose my outfit more carefully next time. To this day, I cannot trust anyone in a uniform who knocks on my door, and I strictly avoid isolated places. Real horror isn't in strangers who look like monsters. It's in the monsters who try to convince you they are there to save you, waiting for that moment you open the door, only to realize you've placed your life in the wrong hands."